Every single living thing, from the tiniest bacterium all the way up to you and me, is made of cells. And each one of these cells is its own little universe, totally sealed off from the outside world. But that brings up a huge question. If a cell is sealed off, how on earth does it get the stuff it needs to actually live?
I want you to think about it like this. Every cell in your body is a tiny fortress. It needs a constant stream of supplies coming in. Food, water, you name it. And it's got to take out the trash. But the whole point of its walls is to keep things out. And that right there is one of the most basic, fundamental puzzles in all of biology.
So this fortress wall, we call it the cell membrane. It's this incredibly thin, kind of oily layer of fat molecules. We're talking just 2 molecules thick. It does an amazing job of keeping the watery world outside separate from the watery world inside. But that oily nature, well, that creates a massive problem for just about anything that needs to get across.
Okay, and here's where the physics gets really interesting. Water, both inside and outside the cell, is a fantastic conductor of electricity. Let's give it a value of, say, 80. The oily membrane, on the other hand, is a terrible conductor. Its value is only about a 2. That enormous difference creates what is essentially an electrical force field that should just repel all the charged particles our cells need to survive.
The amount of energy an ion would need to just brute force its way through that barrier is absolutely astronomical. It's so high that, based on the laws of physics, the fortress should just starve. Nothing should get through. And yet, here we are. Obviously, life found a way around the problem. So how did evolution crack this impossible code? Well, it didn't try to tear down the wall. That would be messy. Instead, it did something much smarter. It built gates. These are highly specialized protein machines that are embedded right into the membrane, and they act like perfect little channels and pumps, creating safe passage for all the essentials. And these gates basically run on 2 master plans. First, you've got passive transport. This is like just opening a gate and letting things flow downhill, from a crowded area to a less crowded one. Super efficient, costs 0 energy. And then you have active transport. This is the real powerhouse. It uses the cell's own energy to actually pump things uphill, completely against their natural flow. So let's start with that elegant, energy-free solution, passive transport. This whole process is about harnessing a natural tendency in the universe, the fact that molecules just want to spread out, moving from where they're packed together to where there's more room.
And to really see just how brilliant this is, we're going to zoom way, way in on one of the most incredible passive gates in all of biology, the potassium ion channel.
So what you're seeing here is a diagram of that amazing molecular machine. Notice it has that wide opening facing into the cell, a big central chamber, and then a very, very narrow section up at the top. That's called the selectivity filter. And trust me, that's where all the magic really happens.
And when I say magic, I'm talking about pure, unbelievable speed. A single one of these potassium channels can let 10 million potassium ions flood through every single second. 10 million! And it does this with perfect accuracy, picking out only potassium, and all without spending a single bit of the cell's energy. I mean, the efficiency is just on a scale that's hard to even wrap your head around.
So here's how it works. Outside the channel, each potassium ion is wearing a little coat of water molecules. To get through that tiny filter, it has to take off the coat. So the channel makes it incredibly easy. The filter is lined with oxygen atoms that are spaced at the perfect distance to feel exactly like those water molecules. So the ion feels right at home, it drops its water coat and slips right inside. Then as the next ion comes in, it literally knocks the first one through, creating this continuous, super high-speed conga line of ions. But, just going with the flow isn't always going to cut it. Sometimes a cell needs to stock up on something inside, or kick something out, fighting against that natural urge to spread out. And for that, it's got to spend some energy. It needs active transport.
And the classic example here is the sodium-potassium pump. This thing is absolutely vital for every single nerve and pulse in your body, and it is a serious energy guzzler. Here's what it does, over and over. It grabs 3 sodium ions from inside the cell, then uses a burst of energy from an ATP molecule to change its shape, and boom, it spits the sodium outside. Then, in its new shape, it grabs 2 potassium ions from the outside, snaps back to its original form, and releases them inside. So why spend all that energy? Why go to all that trouble? Well, as one of the sources for this explainer puts it so beautifully, active transport is what allows a cell to be different from the world around it. It's what builds up the electrical charges that power our nerves and muscles. Without this constant work, a cell would just become a passive bag of chemicals, eventually reaching equilibrium with its surroundings.
which, by the way, is pretty much the scientific definition of being dead. Okay, so we've seen how these things work. But why does any of this actually matter to you? Well, it's because these tiny microscopic gates are, at this very second, running virtually every single process in your body.
I mean, literally every thought you have is an electrical storm firing through your brain, all controlled by ion channels opening and closing. The reason you don't have to drink water constantly is because of special water channels called aquaporins in your kidneys. There are even channels that deliver moisturizers to your skin to keep it hydrated, and others that release energy from your fat cells when you need it.
So these channels really are the gatekeepers of our health. And that means, as you can probably guess, when these gates break down, they become the gateways to disease.
And unfortunately, the list is long and it's serious. We know some cancer cells will actually hijack these water channels to help them move around and spread. There's a devastating autoimmune disorder where the body literally attacks its own water channels in the brain. Genetic mutations in these channels can cause severe kidney diseases, and faulty channels in the lens of your eye are linked to cataracts.
And all of this brings us right to the cutting edge of medicine. Because if broken gates cause disease, then figuring out how to fix them, or at least control them, could be the key to the cure. This is one of the most exciting frontiers in science today.
And scientists are already making incredible progress. They're developing drugs designed to target these very specific channels. For instance, drugs that block certain water channels could one day treat things like glaucoma. Blocking another type might be able to reduce brain swelling after an injury. And get this, finding a way to turn up the channels that release energy from fat cells, that could be a future treatment for obesity.
So think about it. It all started with a simple physics problem: how to get across an oily wall. And from that, life evolved these unbelievably elegant and sophisticated molecular machines. They are the true gatekeepers of the cell, controlling everything from a fleeting thought to our overall health. The question for us now is, what other secrets are they holding? And what will happen when we finally learn to become the gatekeepers ourselves?